Hi, everyone. How are you? Thanks for joining us again for this next session in today's conference. So today we're going to be talking about segmenting properties and building comp sets. And I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation as we finished up one of the sessions earlier this morning. We ran out of time as we were just starting to dig into why these are important. So we're going to introduce today's panel and then let them get started. But the idea here is that, in the hotel industry, revenue managers are able to segment properties on ratings and room attributes and hotel amenities. However, in the vacation rental industry, it's more complex with each property having its own configuration, location, quality, and amenities. So today, for the next 45 minutes, we're going to discuss the why behind property segmentation for pricing and how you can use that to build qualified competitive sets and avoid some of those pitfalls. So our presenters today, you can see on your screen, we have Adrian Davey with AirDNA. We've got Lise Pergo with STR, Tim Speicher, and hopefully I pronounced that right, with Bowie, Dr. Breffney Noon from Penn State, and then our moderator today, Sarah Franzen from Natural Retreats. So I'm going to turn it over to Breffney so you can jump right in and give us some great information. Thanks so much to all of you for being here today.
Super. Thanks so much, Corinne, and good afternoon, everybody. Concepts and pricing are subject areas that are near and dear to my heart, so it is a pleasure to be talking about concepts today. I've been given the lofty task of giving you a very high-level overview of how we use concept data in the hotel industry so that it can inspire some thought about how to use it, how to best use it in the vacation rental setting. And before I start to launch into, how I perceive that comp sets are and should be used, I've got to really underscore here the underlying assumption when you're doing any analysis, including a comp set. The assumption is that you've identified your true competitors. For me, it's a classic case of garbage in, garbage out. If you are not benchmarking against those people that your consumers would pick if they didn't pick you, then you're not benchmarking against the right people, and all of your work is for nothing. So with that caveat said, when I think about using comp sets, I really think about using them from two different perspectives. One is to support forward-looking decisions, and the other is to support backward-looking performance evaluation. So as you can see on the slide, forward-looking decisions really revolves around future pricing and positioning in the market. Backward-looking performance evaluation, bluntly put, did our strategies work in the marketplace? So let me start with forward-looking decisions. And I really see forward-looking decisions from two perspectives. From a very strategic perspective, I think you really need to understand not just where you sit against your competition on price, but you also got to understand where you sit against them in terms of quality. And we call that value positioning. Historically, we've always looked at how our competitors price. And when we used to do that in hotels many years ago, well, the consumer didn't have any other information upon which to make a booking decision. They could only get information about your pricing. Well, along comes the internet. You've got all these sources of information. You've got ratings, you've got reviews, you've got all these third-party websites. And what they allow consumers to do is, before they book something, they allow the consumer to evaluate you against your competition. And they make a choice not just based on price. The research has shown they do not make a choice just based on price. They make a choice based on what they are going to get for the price that they pay. So what they get from a value perspective. So I always like to think about a comp set from the get-go from a very strategic perspective in terms of what your value position is. Now, what does value positioning analysis look like? Well, I've only got a couple of minutes, but I'm going to give you a quick example. First of all, you're going to do your value positioning for each segment or each market that you've got a comp set for. So for example, with hotels, you may have a different comp set for different markets or different days of the week or different seasons of the year. And you got to figure out where you sit in terms of value in each of those comp sets. So what you're looking at right now is the value positioning for a hotel called the Hotel Azure. And this is the value positioning in their weekend leisure market. And in that market, they've got 5 competitors: the Pilot, the Park, the Grand, the ISO, and the Nick. What they've done for that market is they first of all determined what the attributes are that the customers care about in that market. How do you find out what people care about? You ask them, you look at what they write about in reviews, and you pull together a list of those attributes. And then you score yourself against your competitors on those attributes. So by convention, you are the benchmark hotel, so you are 0. Anybody better than you is a +1 to a +5, depending on how much better than you they are. Anybody worse than you is a -1 to -5, again, depending on how much better or worse than you they are. And the idea is to figure out what your score looks like for quality. So for example, if I look at this, the Azure is about the same in terms of quality of location as the Pilot and the Park. The Grand is better, and the ISO is better again. How do you figure out what these numbers are, better or worse? With hotels, we used many years ago to visit the properties, stay in the properties, get a feel for the properties. You don't necessarily have to do that anymore. Your customer will tell you how those people rank against you. You've got what you call your reputation, as you all know, online, and you can derive from ratings data online what those quality scores look like. So the idea is you kind of add all these numbers together to figure out your total quality score. You shop your average, well, you know your average rate, and you shop the average rate for your competition. So with this leisure market segment, it was the average rate for weekends within that given season that they benchmarked. To find your average rate, you can either use a shopping tool, or you can go online and find the information yourself and deduct an overall average. And the goal is to develop a chart that looks something like this. So your quality score I've put in the x-axis, your average rate I've put on the y-axis. I'm here as the benchmark. I've got a 0 quality score. I've got a rate of about 164. And then what I did was I used the information that I gleaned in terms of my total quality scores and my average rates to plot where everybody is. So here's the idea. I'm the Azure here in the middle. Well, if you look down, for example, at the Pilot Hotel, they've got a lower quality score than me and they're lower price than me. Well, I'm probably sitting quite well in the market against them because I'm at a higher rate, but I'm giving better value for what people are getting. I'm rated higher in terms of quality. If you look at the Hotel Grand, it's a bit of a red flag. They're doing better on quality. They're lower in price than you. So you've got to decide from a strategic perspective, okay, do I lower my price to compete with the Hotel Grand, or do I try to improve my quality and my quality of my offering so that I can maintain my price in the market? But what I really like about this is from that very strategic perspective, you're getting an understanding of how you rate against your competition, not just on price, but how the consumer views you. And then how does that distill down into day-to-day decision making? So my second perspective on that forward-looking element of comp sets is from a tactical day-to-day perspective. You know where you're positioned in terms of value. Now what you do is you look at your rates and you look at your rates of your competition and you say, okay, given where I'm positioned in terms of value in the market, do my future rates make sense? So for example, if you look on the screen right now, my hotel on Wednesday, the 8th of March is sitting at 269 in this particular segment. Competitor 1 is sitting at 299. Well, if my value assessment that I did for this category tells me that I actually deliver a much better product than competitor 1, maybe that there's a latitude here to increase my price in the market against competitor 1. Now, obviously, there's other things that are going to come into play. What does demand look like? Are there any other external factors to take into account? But the point is you're understanding what your broad positioning is before you start at a tactical level changing your prices in and out. Okay, so you strategically positioned yourself, you use that information to price on a tactical basis. Once the day has passed, the next question is, how did we do against the comp set? How did our strategies work? And for us in the hotel industry, you'll often hear revenue managers saying they live and die by the STAR report, because that is one of the most important benchmarking tools we use to see how we performed relative to the competition in the market. So with that broad overview done, I think it's probably best now to transition directly into Lise, who's actually going to take you through some of those aspects of the STAR report. So Lise, over to you.
Great, thank you, Breffney. Let me share my screen with you guys as well. 1 second.
Okay, Lisa, I just went ahead and made you the presenter, so you're good to go. All right.
Cool. 1 second. Okay. So good afternoon. As mentioned, my name is Elise. I am with STR, formerly known as Smith Travel Research. We were just talking about this before we got started, not to be confused with STR, short-term rental. Really excited to be here talking from the hotel lens today. I came from the hotel industry before coming to STR. Over the course of the past year, though, I've been more involved on the vacation rental side of things. So really excited to rejoin this conversation from the hotel lens. So let's jump in. So I'm going to walk you guys through how to build a comp set, quickly talk about revenue management, and then we will talk about the STAR report. But again, before we jump in, really, who is STR and what is the STAR report? STR is the leading data analytics and benchmarking company in the hotel industry. And the STAR report is our benchmarking tool that compares your hotel's performance against a similar set of hotels known as a comp set. In order to receive your STAR report, hoteliers must submit performance data, which is what we've been talking about all day, performance data being rooms you sell, the rooms revenue you make. You submit that to us, we then average it into your comp set data. We send it out daily, weekly, monthly, based on aggregated performance. Because of the fact we only report out in an average comp set number and not individual property data, STR has been the gold standard for hotel industry data for the past 3 decades. We now collect data from over 180 countries, which equates to over 9 million rooms worldwide. So what goes into building a competitive set? Because of STR's longevity in the hotel industry, we have thousands of data points hoteliers can consider when building a competitive set. And when doing so, we recommend that hotels not only select those hotels that are across the street from you, but also encourage hotels to take into account the characteristics of hotels in the area, such as location, which would be urban, suburban, near the airport, any of those. Take into consideration price, so that's your ADR bracket. You may have heard Patrick this morning talk about luxury economy properties. That's what I mean by your price point. Also take into account your market's business mix, so your transient leisure travelers versus your group blocks. Also think about hotel type, so boutique, limited service. Does it have a restaurant? Is there a resort? Is it near a beach? Does it have convention, meeting space? Which would be probably the most comparable to the vacation rental industry, that of a resort / the lifestyle hotels that you are now seeing come around. Other things to consider would be number of rooms, seasonality of a property, the age, and the physical building, on top of the things that Breffney had mentioned, like reviews, etc. So once you have chosen a solid competitive set based on the properties that closely resemble your property type, you're ready to start the practice of revenue management. Benchmarking is the foundation of revenue management. So looking at this example, manager A seems to be performing better than manager B. But especially in this COVID era, we know that market conditions play a big factor in understanding property performance. That's why benchmarking is such an essential practice for not only adjusting pricing strategy to win over business from your competitors, but also for understanding how market conditions are affecting your property and the properties around you. So decline doesn't always mean you're failing. There's something in manager B's strategy that is mitigating the losses their competitors are seeing and helping them weather the storm so it sets them up for success when market conditions improve. Your performance needs to be viewed within that context. Again, that is why benchmarking is so important. So once you understand the basics of benchmarking, you can start to think about the revenue cycle, which in a very simple way is just analyzing the data so that you can identify areas of opportunity, but as well as not opportunities, but understand where you're performing well. So then you can develop your strategy and then continue to monitor your progress and refine your strategy. Hotels all over the world are practicing this every day with the STAR report, which I want to take you through a couple different slides. So most of you probably aren't familiar what the inside of a STAR report looks like. There are 15 to 30 different tabs in this online dashboard. What I specifically wanted to draw from these couple of things that I will walk you through is how to segment within the STAR report. So the number one in the left-hand corner, this graph displays each customer type's contribution to occupancy. Anyone who came from the hotel industry 10 years ago probably won't be as familiar with what this dashboard looks like, but this will help you understand if your property's bookings are driven by business, leisure, or group demand. So the light blue represents occupancy driven by transient demand, and the dark blue represents demand driven by groups, which is defined as a signed agreement blocking 10 or more rooms. And then number two, you can see that this graph allows you to adjust between property and comp set so you can understand what customer types are staying with your competitors as well. And then moving down to number three is an example of the type of data used in weekly revenue management meetings. Hoteliers look at both weekly and monthly STAR reports to get a pulse of the comp set's occupancy, ADR, and Webpart to answer questions like, are you getting your fair share of the market? Did you overprice or did you underprice rooms? If you overpriced, did your occupancy suffer, etc. You can choose between looking at transient and group data, which is what number 4 is pointing out. So you can ask yourself questions in a very granular way, that is to understand, for example, if you are over or underpricing group blocks compared to your comp set, or is your comp set capturing more business travel than you? Again, the next thing that I wanted to show you, probably not one of the biggest highlights of the STAR report unless you are very analytical. So first, number 1, this shows you the list of chosen properties in your competitive set. Again, we allow people to choose exactly who is in their comp set. You can never view any individual property's data, but you can know who's reporting in your comp set and how many rooms they have and different attributes. You can also change your comp set if you feel like your comp set that's in place isn't the most accurate. A reason that may have changed, for example, is if a property closes, if a new property enters the market and you want to add that property, if a hotel in your comp set rebranded and it's not in the same ADR price bracket as you anymore. Just a few examples, but again, we allow hoteliers the flexibility to make sure they capture the most accurate comp set possible. Skipping 2 and 3 just for time, moving to number 4, occupancy, ADR, and RevPAR for your property versus your comp set, and for your industry being all of the properties in your market who have a similar ADR than you. This table format is exportable to Excel. Excel is great in the hotel industry for 2 reasons. You can send among to your revenue management team, and then you can also export and upload into your internal systems to do your own analysis. There's PMS providers that have their own STR dashboards, their RMS providers as well. And then on the right-hand side, number 5 is month-to-date, weekday versus weekend. So you can really get granular and understand if your weekdays perform better than your weekends, if your Tuesdays better than your Wednesday, and readjust and refine your strategies. And then this is a new addition. Really excited to announce this. We are excited to launch Forward Start in the US. This will be forward bookings data that can be compared against your market or your comp set. It will measure business on the books for the upcoming 90 to 365 day time periods on a weekly basis. Forward Start is already available internationally, but again, soon to be the US. And I'm going to thank you guys for inviting me. So while we are the leading data provider for the hotel industry, we are also piloting for service departments, vacation rentals, and for hostels. We are actively thinking about the best in-class benchmarking for all users in all sectors, and we look forward to being a thought partner with this industry. So I'm going to pass it to AirDNA now.
And while you're doing that, let me just say, I'm just listening to Breffney and Lise. It's really, I think, heartening that all of this, whether maybe not in this exact iteration like the STAR report, for example, but a lot of the conceptual stuff is very transferable to the vacation rental sphere. And so I think a lot of times we're very overwhelmed by, you know, vacation rental revenue management, but the basics and the fundamentals are really very transferable, and I think very much the same language. So with that, I'll shoot it on over to Adrienne.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you're going to see, you know, different versions of, you know, both of these women have already discussed. This presentation is really timely for us at AirDNA, just given that, you know, we're actively coding a new feature for our flagship product, Market Minder, to allow our users to select comp sets and really customize those and dig in deep with the data that we have. So similar to what the other women shared, when we are thinking about how to build the best comp set, we're looking at these 5 major buckets. There's some really, you know, straightforward and objective things to look at, like distance, certain amenities, what size is the property, and how many guests does it accommodate. But then we start to get into some of the more subjective areas that get a little bit more difficult to hone in on and really, you know, help you decide your comp set. Kind of getting into what Breffney was talking about in terms of quality and value positioning. You know, those things take a little bit more digging. So that's the property quality, and that can be the rate, but you know, it can also be reviews like we've talked about, and other things related to the luxury or the economy of the property. And then there's the host experience. So you know, this can take different forms, but you know, you want properties in your comp set that are actively being managed. And that could be a professionally managed property, but it could also be an entrepreneurial host who has maybe 1 or 3 properties that they're really focused on and actively managing to try and get the most revenue out of. And so that's where we think, you know, our data in terms of the breadth across, you know, over 10 million properties worldwide really helps you to get that full view of all of the different types of properties that are out there. So when you're actually in our tool, so this is you're gonna start seeing some screens here from our Market Minder tool. We have a My Properties page where users can upload, you know, all of their properties and essentially build out a customized comp set for each property. And where that's gonna take you is basically to start in this list view. And what that's really going to be anchored on is our proprietary comparability score that takes into account proximity, guests, and bedrooms, as well as price. And we're going to continue to be adding to that and refining that over time. But what the goal of this is to really, you know, start to give you a guide towards which properties are going to be most comparable to yours, and also help drive the recommended properties that we want to provide to you. And then once you start digging into the tool a little bit more, we provide different sorts of filters, again, to help you hone in on some of those intangibles, you know, using a property's occupancy rate, their daily rate, their annual revenue, to start to get closer to properties that either look like yours or aspirational to where you want your property to be. And then, you know, being that this is a customizable tool, to stay true to the name, we allow you to toggle properties on and off. and then really see how that affects the overall summary metrics of the properties you've selected for your comp set. So basically you can toggle properties on and off, see how that affects the overall occupancy rate or revenue. And again, make sure that that matches where your property either currently is at or where you want it to be. And then again, other ways to continue to dig in and refine your comp set. Not only can you filter on amenities like hot tub or a pool, which might be important in certain markets and less important in others, but you can also filter on whether or not somebody is a super host. So are they actively managing a property? Do they have a certain number of bookings per year? But you can also look at ratings and reviews, and again, start to filter down for some of those things that may be indicative of quality. And then we also enable this in a map view as well. So, you're going to know your location the best. So you're going to be able to understand that you have comp properties in this neighborhood versus that neighborhood, and they have similar amenities or benefits to the visitor. And then we also wanted to really take our statistical lens to this. We are data nerds at heart. So when we think about, data science, one of those common practices when you're trying to look for trends and understand data more deeply is really, we'd recommend a larger sample size, where that's possible. We completely understand that there are going to be certain properties or certain regions where that's going to be difficult. But we do recommend having a larger sample size where possible. A couple ways to do that are to really focus on the guest count first. So that's going to be the first thing that is either going to include your property or exclude your property from a certain set of competitive properties. And also considering similar nearby neighborhoods, like I mentioned before, that might have, like an example would be, in a more urban environment, finding neighborhoods that have similar walkability, restaurants and shops nearby, that kind of thing. Because those folks are going to be your competitors too, not just the folks that are, half a mile from you. And the real point of this is to be able to see trends more clearly as you start to use this data and take actions off this comp set. If you have a larger sample size and you're able to have more properties, then you can start to see things more clearly. The trends will be less volatile, and also outlier properties may not affect those trends, as much and skew or bias the data that you're seeing. So that goes into, where the rubber meets the road from a comp set perspective, is once you've defined your comp set, how are you actually using it? There are two places where we are going to be piping our competitive set data into MarketMinder. So these are two existing reports that we currently have at the market level that we're going to start showing at the comps level. So we have a dynamic pricing tool that allows you to see your rates versus your competitors' rates and see where there are opportunities, to potentially lower your price and become more competitive, or raise your price and capitalize on more revenue. Then we also have our pacing page, and I'll be showing you guys screenshots of both of these, but the pacing page really allows you to see those broader trends over 6 months, understand where you're winning and losing versus your competitors, and also compare to last year, starting to get into the benchmarking, which we plan to do a bunch more of, but given the current COVID circumstances, we're really focusing on these forward facing reports. So here's a view of what our pricing calendar looks like. And this is where you can see in the red and green, where you may want to decrease or increase your price for a certain day, given how your competitors are priced. The other thing that we're going to recommend as we go through a bunch of these reports is comparing the competitive view of these reports to the market view. Again, that just helps you get much broader context for the market as a whole and what's going on, and understanding if those trends are market related or are they more micro trends focused on your neighborhood or something like that. And also just help you understand like how much you may or may not need to vet those trends. The second report where we are going to be piping in competitive set data is our pacing report. So this has 3 charts that I'm going to walk through rather quickly, but completely welcome questions or any insight or that anyone wants to have on these. But the first chart here is this yellow and purple chart, and that is our future demand analysis. And what this really does is help you understand the overall sample size. It's giving you the number of booked properties on a given day and what the booked rate for those properties was. So that will really give you the context as you scroll down through the other charts to understand how to read those and how to think about them. As an example, if you only have one of your comps that's booked on a day that's maybe 5 months out, you may want to take that booked rate with a grain of salt because it's only based on one property potentially. So once we start to get into some of the other charts that look at our rates and our different booking trends, these start to get really interesting. And so I pulled some real data from one of my favorite places to vacation, Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I actually pulled this yesterday, so it's pretty fresh and interesting. And so one of the really interesting things here for this example where we start to look at rates is we can see the dark green line, which is the booked rate for this year. We're seeing, increases in prices for the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. But when you start to dig into it a little more, you can see that, but actually the available rates for Thanksgiving are pretty close to what the booked rates were for last year. So there's not really much room for that price to decay over the next few months. So what you can expect for Thanksgiving is if you have a property that's not booked yet, you may end up actually with lower revenue than you did compared to last year. But if you look out to the December holidays, you can see that there's a lot more room between that purple and the light green line. So what the available rate is and what the booked rate was for last year. And there's more room for decay and more opportunity to capitalize on revenue. And then my last and final slide here in terms of the booking trends. This is really about for what time frame are your competitors getting bookings and when did those reservations happen? How recent were they? So another example here in Santa Fe, we can see that those Thanksgiving reservations, about half of them, so that those bottom 2 stacked area charts, about 50% of the reservations have happened in the last 30 days. So people are actively booking for Thanksgiving. That trend is a bit softer when we start to look forward at the Christmas holiday, so we can expect to see that picking up and again, focus on capitalizing on those bookings at Christmas. So yeah, that's just a quick overview of how we approach custom comps in our tool, and we look forward to releasing it in the coming weeks.
Great, thank you so much. Before I go over to Tim, one of the things that is kind of coming through in my mind, and I'm thinking Breffney touched on it a little bit, talking about, the forward look, with pricing and positioning. And I think those are really important because I think a lot of times in hotels, it's easier to, say, okay, here's my comps on my star report, my 9 comps are there, and I know exactly where I'm positioned in there, and I kind of know where I should be. With VR, it's a little bit different because I think sometimes when we think about comp sets, we're thinking about them as tools to price match, our competitors. And I think that, a lot of times the pricing is really kind of a tactic, those little micro adjustments, as opposed to this general strategy where we're just going to follow our competitors with whatever they do. I mean, talking about the value proposition, I mean, that's a huge one. So Tim, I'd be really interested, I don't know exactly what you're going to say, but I'd be really interested to hear kind of how you kind of take all of what we've heard today and not kind of go down that slippery slope of just, well, this guy did this, and so now I'm going to follow suit.
Tim, you should have gotten the information to start sharing your screen, I believe. So let us know. Oh, it appears that
he didn't want to answer the question.
He's not going to answer your question, Sarah.
I know. I know. Well, I think that's really interesting. And one of the things, Adrian, as you were showing your screen, that was something that I've seen not just in your product, but in some others too, where they have, the daily rates, and you can see, how you are performing to your comp set or whatever, and it's in red or green depending on where your rates fall. So that's just one thing, and I see that Tim's back, so we'll just kind of give him a chance to.
Hey, sorry, I had to grant some. Yeah,
No worries.
grant some permissions on my screen. All right, so how do I share my screen here? There we
I
go.
just made you the presenter, so you should be able to do
Perfect.
that now. Okay.
Excellent.
Got it.
All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So a few years ago, I was at Oasis, which is a big company with a global footprint. They had received an investment from Hyatt Hotels.
Think. Hey, Tim, if you can hear us, I don't think we can hear you.
No, Tim, it looks like you're muted again, Tim.
I don't know if he can hear us.
I don't think he can hear us because he's
It
telling
looks
us
like
something very
he's
exciting.
really, yeah, it's very interesting, I can tell.
Hey, Tim, we can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I back
Okay,
now?
You're back.
You're
Okay.
back. You have about 6 minutes.
No problem.
Hey, I'm gonna
So,
jump in. Extend this out for another 5 minutes. The people coming on that are presenting next are super professional. I've done it with them a few times, so like they know my drill. So we can actually let's go a few more minutes. I really want to hear this.
All right, sounds good.
Awesome.
Great.
Amy.
So I found that it was on me in order to convince them of the rates I was setting in their market. It was on me to give them the context that would inspire faith in my rates. And also, like, I had to do something that could be completely replicable across all of those different destinations, because like there's only so many conversations with owners that I could have. If every owner has one, maybe two homes at the most, and there's more than 1,000 in the portfolio, that's far too much for one dude to handle. So I can tell you that the best way that I did it was providing context through comp sets, the exact same type of benchmarking and forward-looking rates that we've been talking about so far. And whenever I would present a comp set, I would encounter what I call now the 5 buts. Okay, so those 5 buts. Hold on, am I paused? Did everybody see my screen change?
No, but we can hear you.
Okay, actually, hold on. Is this working now? Nope. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry that I'm such a noob with this stuff. Yeah. Damn. Well, everybody has the workbook, so I'll just let you follow along in that. And I'm not sure why I couldn't get this to play. My apologies. Anyway, so the first part is they would ask, are they nearby? And so that means like, you would think zip code is good, you think neighborhood is good, but while those are both okay, the zip codes are sometimes drawn in really funny ways, and neighborhoods are sometimes subjective. Sometimes an owner in New Orleans thinks they're in the French Quarter, but when you look at the home on a map, it says Treme, and those are very different neighborhoods if you're looking New Orleans. So I found that the best thing that I would do is include a radius. So that way I would know that any of the listings in the comp set were close to them on a map. So then the next thing they would say is, but are they the same size? So naturally you think bedroom count and bathroom count. Of course, capacity is also very important, but it's more important, it's less important to match capacity and more important to match a range. Because if you have a home, say, with a capacity of 12 and a home with a capacity of 18, but they have the same number of bedrooms, then you can assume that like you get to 18 through air mattresses or some sort of other chicanery that's probably going to mean that the homes are like actual comps. So I tend to group those in together. The third but is they say, but are they of similar quality? So you can knock that out right away with review scores and review counts. That's the easiest. If you can get down into the categorical reviews, that's even better. But just those top two are really important. But then design quality is also really important as well. And that's because these homeowners are experts on their property, they're experts on their neighborhood, and they put a lot of time and love into building out this home. And so they've thought about the design a lot, and they want to know that other homeowners have done something similar. So that's subjective. You've got to just like give them some listings to click through. Number 4, this is when we start getting a little bit trickier. Is they're going to ask, are they in the same segment? So it's obvious, like they mean urban, corporate, leisure, et cetera, et cetera. But like from my perspective, it's tough to identify that from a it's tough to identify that without knowing like what's in the mind of the revenue manager and the company. So what I use to identify it, and it's remarkably accurate, is just looking at the location, which we've already covered, and the occupancy profile. Because if I can see all of your reservations, then I can tell pretty quickly. Like, are you a comp? Are you just booked up on the weekends? Are you getting like low ADR stays at the beginning of the week as well? Are you like a corporate housing place that has lots of long stays? I can pretty quickly tell from the occupancy profile and the location what segment you're in. Then people are going to want to look at the professionalism level of the host. So are they an individual with 1 or 2 homes, or are they somebody who has 50 to 100 units, or are they a company that has 500 to 1,000? All of these rentals are on the same websites. Guests are looking between all of them, and it's important that we take that into account. And then lastly, and this is usually where the conversation would terminate, was with recent revenue. If I could say, hey, these guys are near you, they're in your segment, they've got your same size, blah, 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 and also they earn about the same amount as you, that's usually where the conversation would end as far as the vacation rental comps go. However, the last thing that they would ask is, but what about hotels? So naturally, especially when it comes to looking at forward-looking rates, people want to see where the hotels are priced, because that's the best way for me to justify setting a rate at $700 when they think the ADR should be $150 or something like that. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen one more time and show you the dashboard that I have built out. So whoever is going to grant me that power, give me a shot.
I am giving it to you right now. You should have just gotten the notification, Tim.
Excellent.
Is it, did you get the alert? There we go.
All right.
Yep, we got
looks like that came through.
There we go. Yeah, there you go. You're good.
Okay, perfect. So what we're seeing here is, everything that I just described, I built out into an algorithm, along with a couple other special sauce pieces that I won't talk about. But this is one of my clients in Los Angeles, and it shows how I display his comp set. So like, we've got all of his listings over here. I just have it sorted down like by his nickname and his bedroom, because he knows all of those other attributes. And then I've got on the map right here, so he can validate that they're actually near him. And then we've got the vacation rentals in yellow, so he can compare. And then over here on the right side of the screen, he can go through and validate every one of the individual comps. And then naturally, if we want to compare other rates in the market, we can do that, looking out anywhere in the future. And this is going to chug because, I'm on the Wi-Fi presenting. So, it can say, okay, I want to see how we're going to be priced for October 4th. And then this will update for that period of time. Or I can go through and say, okay, that's a 1-bed. We've got a high concentration of 1-beds there in Los Angeles. Let's see like a lower concentration here with the 3-beds. So if this switches, there you go. So much lower, much lower density. So that tends to happen as you go up in bedroom count. So we talked about like how we measure comps, like looking at benchmarking. I use the same view for everything that I do. I like can wrap reporting, forward looking up into this together, and like I try to mash your own rates plus your vacation rental competitive set plus your hotel competitive set all into one thing. So that way owners can very quickly validate any rate that I told you guys. I should also say this client likes to have a really big comp set. So I would probably have this restricted a little bit more for a lot of people, but this guy wants 100 listings for every date. So with the exception of like this guy, I think that we usually got there. So yeah, that's what we have available for anybody who's on our revenue management system. Cool, did I make it in time?
Yeah, it's great. Yes, time. We are at time, but thank you everybody for presenting. One of the things that just really stands out is that, you know, I'm not sure that there is an answer to exactly how to develop a comp set, but I think it's really important that we consider that, you know, comps, what we're using the comp sets for. You know, we're not using them to make everyday pricing. We're not using, it should be a tool, right? But not the only thing that we're looking at. Just because we have 5 one-bedrooms with a pool, and a 1-bedroom with a pool would be great, but 1-bedrooms that are pet friendly that, you know, have, doesn't mean that they're comps. And we really need to take a look at our position in the market and what we're going for. I mean, that should be part of our overall long-term strategy, is our position. And then we make these, you know, changes that we can use this comp set for as a tool to make those little tactical moves as we go. As the market shifts. So I'm really happy to have met you all. I think I'd met Lise beforehand, but I'm really pleased to meet you all, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys. That was fantastic. So we are going to go ahead and, you know, I can't thank all of the presenters today enough for sharing their expertise and their knowledge about this topic. I will not lie that coming into this is probably one of the least pieces, the areas of vacation rental management that I personally knew least about. So I've been really interested to hear how this is all being looked at, and really appreciate you all taking the time to share that with us. For all of you attendees, we have another session that's going to be starting in 10 minutes. So please take a minute and come back and join us to learn more about internal demand data using your websites and call center data for revenue management strategies. So thanks, great guys. Have a great day, and we'll talk to y'all soon. See you in 10 minutes. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.